Good morning, friends. Welcome to Journey Home Meditation's Morning Sit. Today, we're going to talk about Andrea Gibson a bit. A poet has died. She left her body behind. So, let's listen to the wonderfully grievesome voice of Seth Martin, bringing us some comfort and some permission for sadness.
When I rise, let me rise like a bird with no regret, joyfully. When I fall, let me fall like a leaf with no regrets, joyfully. When I rise, let me rise like a bird with no joyfully. When I fall, let me fall like a leaf with no regrets and joyful.
So those words that Seth Martin was singing were from another poet, Wendell Berry. There's an affinity amongst poets. And there's a temptation when a poet dies to feel as if something is gone from the world. There's a special kinship that you share as a poet. Maybe it's because we're sensitive. Maybe it's because we're sensitive in a world that wants to blame the people that feel for the pain that it causes. But I don't think that feeling is only the property of poets. I just think that poets have a way of finding our coping mechanism through language, through communication. That's where we connect. And because of this, I think that poets can connect with other poets. And so I know that when a poet dies, even a poet I never sat with in person, never sat across from, or shared a night of drinking in our younger days together, or never made each other laugh outside of a poetry reading, whatever it may be, whatever we did not do. What we did was exist here in this time, taking on this monumental task of trying to find the right way to soothe someone without taking away their pain, to entertain someone without distracting them from their feelings, to connect with someone without pandering, and to share without stealing all of the air in the room. And Andrea Gibson is a poet who could do all of those things so wonderfully. So wonderfully. They were a constant voice of welcoming to your own pain, not as something being wrong about you, but something that is you, something that is yours, and it's part of the story that is so beautiful about each of us. And they were great at illustrating that and eliciting that from people. They came into the larger public consciousness first through slam poetry, this sort of performance poetry that is a contest. But anybody in the slam world will tell you that it's not a competition. It's more of a group of friends setting the bar higher and higher every time they are together. And instead of leaving people behind, there's always this hand that pulls people along, or there's an understanding, I think, amongst poets that we are weaving a life raft so that we don't drown in the sorrow of the world, but we can swim in it, But then through TikTok and Instagram and these social media platforms, Andrea Gibson was able to touch into something deeper than just a 3-minute performance. They were able to transcend the feed of doom scrolling and offer these glimpses into a sincerity about fear and a sincerity about their pain that was inviting, it was welcoming, and it was healing for so many. And in fact, the best way I've ever heard poetry or the act of being a poet described was in somebody describing their experience of Andrea Gibson. They said in their religious tradition, you can't look at God directly. And this is in the Abrahamic tradition, and we are taught that, to look at God would be too brilliant, too magnificent. So you can't look at God directly, but you can look at where God just was. And that's what they said it feels like reading Andrea Gibson's poetry. Like looking at where God just was. And that made so much sense to me, because the way that Andrea Gibson had embraced the calling of their work was this most honest portrayal they could have. And when they got sick with cancer, and it uprooted their lives, it changed their lives greatly, they were very open about it. They were very open throughout the whole process of going into remission and then coming back out. And they were very public about their experience with treatments, radiation, chemo, their experience with the American healthcare system, their experience with fear and relationships and love. And they were also very open about not wanting to characterize what was occurring with them as a battle. So often in our culture, we hear about battling sickness. And in fact, if you Google Andrea Gibson's name, they're going to speak about them as if they were battling cancer. You're going to see this, the headline on multiple news outlets. Colorado poet laureate loses battle to cancer. What a reductive and absolutely ignorant stance to take about this person. There was nothing lost with Andrea Gibson. And I think I'm going to let Andrea Gibson's voice. This is from one of their many button poetry videos that you can find. So let's settle in for just a few minutes here, and we can hear the voice of Andrea Gibson tell us in their own words.
I got sick in 2003. And as much as I tried, illness was one relationship I could never manage to leave. In spite of seeing every doctor in Colorado, I could not divorce my body from its pain. In 2010, I woke up in a scream that lasted 8 months, a Charlie horse bucking through my blood. I didn't believe I could live through it for half an hour. Then half a year passed, and it was still nowhere close to tamed. I struggled to walk from my bed to the bathroom, left my house for nothing but my shows that I didn't just cancel. What would have been healthy to cancel was a side effect of both shame and having been raised proudly working class by a father who hated having a heart attack less than he hated having to call in sick because of it. To make it through my tour, I wore an 8-year-old's pink sequin dance leotard hidden beneath my clothes for every reading, a makeshift compression suit to ease the pain, bought at a dance store beside a venue on a night I knew it would be as easy for me to stand up on stage for 60 minutes as it would be for me to win the Olympics. Every week, a new doctor would ask my symptoms. I'd always answer, my blood feels like crushed glass. I had no other way to explain it. They had no idea what to do. Once during a layover in Chicago, my legs at that point atrophied to toothpicks. It took me 90 minutes to walk from one gate to the next. By the time I boarded, I felt so close to dead. I was certain the plane would be my casket. So right before takeoff, I lost it, wailing like an ambulance in the aisle of United 685 until the plane stopped on the runway and turned around to usher me into the hands of medics. Needless to say, it wasn't the sexiest moment of my life, though I do believe those flight attendants still dream about me. I guarantee it's not because they think I'm freaky in a good way. Some months later, I finally got diagnosed with chronic Lyme disease, started a pantry of meds and began improving. But when I hit a roadblock in my healing, I began a weekly treatment where essentially they'd take out my blood, clean it, and put it back in. During my first appointment, I almost vomited, seeing that my blood was the color of tar and a similar texture. The doctor said it was common with the disease, but it gave me the willies watching something come out of my veins that looked like it had come from a gutter. One week, noticing my blood had worsened after I'd gotten in an argument with a friend, I became obsessed with what I might be able to do on my own to turn my blood red. Before every weekly appointment, I'd experiment. What happens to the color when I meditate? What happens when I do yoga? What happens if I put nothing in my body but seaweed, dandelion leaves, and juiced kale? What happens if I bathe in salted crystals while chanting into my root chakra, while breathing sage into the lungs of a cloud shaped like Mother Mary, admitting some sexy devil swallowed her holy cherry? Some of my experiments actually helped brighten my blood a bit, but not so much that I wasn't losing faith and sunk by despair. I spent an entire long weekend doing nothing but drinking and fucking, mostly fucking. A woman I'd adored for years, but had only recently found the courage to ask out or ask in, since I could still rarely go out. She stayed with me for 3 days, and I don't remember a minute I didn't feel like a country farm boy getting gratefully ruined in the bed of his daddy's truck. My body, a graffitied confession booth turned inside out for that woman's truth. At one point, a pig walked over from the neighbor's field, pressed his snout to the door, and fogged up the glass, watching us get dirty on a beanbag on the living room floor. We stopped, of course, as soon as we saw the pig, shooed the kinky angel back home, and kept going. Walking into my appointment on Monday morning, I was so terrified of the dark I knew they'd find inside me. I slammed my eyes shut when the doctor slid the needle into my arm. They were still shut when he belted, "Jesus Christ." I opened my eyes, and my blood was so bright. It was the color of pomegranate seeds, of wild strawberries, of ladybugs in love. It was the color of falling autumn maple leaves, a part of the sunset you cannot believe is real. My blood was the color of the lipstick she left on my collarbone, the color of her fingernails dug into my hips, the color of my blushing when she told me to feel her up, and I accidentally started unbuttoning her pants. Y'all, I did not have a clue how I managed to live this many years without knowing feel me up means touch my boobs, but I know it now. I know it now. Just like I know my blood is red when it's red, at least partially because of love, because of what holds me to the light, what touches me to the core, what shine me like a ruby and wore me around her neck. You can die from a broken heart. I've watched it happen. I've watched someone's body follow a loved one's body to the other side. It was the hardest thing I ever witnessed in my life, but it was the softest too. One heart stopping to tell another heart, I'm coming with you. You can die from a broken heart, but the opposite is also true.
Let's take a few breaths together. I know we're a bit into the sit together before we're doing this, and that's okay. That's good. We've got a lot to breathe in and a lot to breathe out today, so have a few moments. I think that for me, the work of Andrea Gibson was to remind us regularly that we are made of love things. We are made of love things. And that we come alive when one love thing recognizes another. They start to brighten. The way maybe that fireflies will signal to each other in the field, and then once one starts to signal, the other ones will signal back, and then you see this beautiful light show occurring. I read somewhere that this may be the last generation of humans to live with fireflies on this planet, and I don't know if that's true. But there's not enough poems about them yet, so lightning bugs, fireflies. And the way that they will signal to each other and it lights them up. That's kind of what Andrea Gibson did. That's what Andrea Gibson brought. I don't know if it's important to continue playing Andrea Gibson's voice, but I know that there's plenty of places that you can hear their voice. If you want to hear their voice, you can look for them all over the place. Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. And you're going to see a lot of articles written about them today. And a lot of love and a lot of praise. And I want you to consider, when reading these tributes and these articles, each time you see lost a battle to cancer, to comment. There was no loss here. Andrea Gibson did not lose. Andrea Gibson did not fight. Andrea Gibson arrived and showed up with love and with courage and fear at the same time. That's when courage is there. Courage only arrives with fear. I think that's an important thing for us to remember. Courage only arrives with fear. They ride together. So when you're feeling fearful, whether it's of your own death or the death of a loved one, or you're feeling fearful about abandonment or rejection or diminishing energies, or when you're feeling fearful that you aren't going to be enough for whatever thing, just remember that courage and fear, they ride together. They could split the fare. I wanted to read one more little poem today. This is a poem. It's a brief poem by Wendell the poet who wrote "When I Rise," the song that was being sung by Seth Martin in the beginning of this sit. Epitaph reads, "Having lived long in time, he lives now in timelessness, without sorrow, made perfect by our never finished love, by our compassion and forgiveness, and by his happiness in receiving these gifts we give. Here, in time, we are added to one another forever." So thank you, Andrea Gibson, for being here in time and adding to each of us who have heard your voice forever. This is procreation. This is how we reincarnate. So there you are. Andrea Gibson's alive right now. I just heard their voice. Didn't you? Didn't you hear that voice? Maybe it wasn't clear in what those words were, but you can find something and you can hear their voice and it can come alive, I promise you. And that's true across the board for each of us. And this is not a bypass for understanding that death is very real, and death takes our bodies away, and death hurts, and death is sad and sorrowful at times. Yeah, that's all true. Because just like courage and fear split the cab fare, so does joy and sorrow. They take turns driving on long trips, I think. So thanks, Andrea Gibson, for the joy and for the sorrow. You are a well-loved poet. And thank you all for being here today. I'm going to end this sit with that. You can check out Andrea Gibson's poetry all over the internet. So spend some time this morning, imbibe in some poetry, some spoken word, watching their YouTube videos of their performances. This is where their passion was for so long, was in performance poetry. So maybe you've never heard a slam poet before. Maybe you are one of those people that believe that poetry is just not for you. That's okay. I still encourage you to listen to this wonderful voice just for a bit. And I think that if you do, you will be encouraged to pick up a pen or record your own voice into your phone or type it into your computer. Just a few pieces of poetry today. And remember, there is no coincidence that every spiritual text that has survived has been written in poetic verse. So take that and take the charge today. Let's live for poetry and through poetry just for today. Thanks for being here, everyone. Very, very, very happy to have been here today. Thank you, Andrea Gibson. Thank you, Wendell Berry. And thank you, Seth Martin.